Brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, assalamu alaikum. At this time of year, for people in my community, this is usually a time when you put politics to one side and we have 2 or 3 days off. I usually think that I'll have 2 or 3 days with my family and then, we can return to political things in January. But yesterday, I sat like many of you and watched the television, and unfolding in front of my eyes was yet another horror inflicted on the Palestinian people of Gaza by the Israeli state and their armed forces. And faced with that catastrophe, it's important for all of us to speak out. John said and Mark said, what's the point of us coming out in Preston on an evening like this? Well, this is an absolutely fantastic turnout. And this is happening not only in Preston, it's happening in Glasgow, in Manchester, in Birmingham, in London, and across the country, and then outside of Britain, in France, in Spain, in America, people are protesting at the barbarity of what the Israelis are doing today, are doing yesterday, and saying that they're going to continue to do for the next 3 or 4 days. So you're absolutely right to come out, and you will be absolutely right to come out over the next few days, because we must protest, and we must confront the Israelis and the lies that they are saying. So what are the Israeli lies? The first lie is that this is all as response to the Qassam rockets that have been launched by the Gaza because Hamas has broken the ceasefire. That's a lie. That's a lie. For the last 6 months there has been a ceasefire, and Hamas stuck to that ceasefire. On the 4th of November, a very important day because the 4th of November was the American election night. And on the American election night, the Israeli Defense Forces launched an attack which killed Hamas members on Gaza. It was Israel that broke the ceasefire and continued to do so throughout November in the run-up to the end of the ceasefire on the 19th of December. Hamas asked for the renewal of that ceasefire. Israel said no. From the 19th of December until yesterday, 19 rockets. In total, 19 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. How many people did they kill? Not a single person. Not a single person. And in response to that, yesterday, the IDF launched an attack in which, at the moment, 900 people have been injured, 290 people have been killed, 50 children have been killed, and many more remain buried in their homes, in their offices, and in their workplaces. That was the response. That is, at the very least, disproportionate. But actually behind that, it's not about disproportionality, it's about Israel flexing their muscles again and trying to smash Hamas. Because although this is a war that's taken place, and this is a violent war of the last few days, this is a war that has been going on for the last 2 years at the very least. Because for the last 2 years, Gaza has been cut off. They have had no medicine, they've had no fuel, they've had no food, simply because their crime was to elect a Hamas government. Because they dared to use the democratic vote to vote for Hamas, Israel blockaded them for 2 years. And what that has led to in Gaza is the slow death of the many. The slow death of the many. Those who die of diabetes, of cancer, of illness, of hunger, of cold, the elderly, the young, they die on a daily basis because of the blockade. We should not think that when the Israelis talk about peace and peaceful coexistence and 6 months ceasefire, we should not be fooled into thinking that Palestinians have not died, because they have died in their hundreds because of the barbarity of the blockade which Israel has continued to impose on the Palestinians of Gaza. So this is just the most recent, the most barbaric, the most vicious period of the latest phase of the attack of the people of Gaza. Those things we should not forget. And therefore you all have a responsibility when we leave here today. Because over the next few days, the most well-oiled spin machine in the world will be put into operation, and every time there is a critical voice spoken about in anywhere in the media, the Israeli media spin operation will come in and tell a different story, a lying story. I saw it just before I came out. They said Israel had to act, because for every day through the ceasefire, Hamas were launching rockets. It's a lie, and we must all confront that lie. So if you see that in your papers, write a letter. If you see it on the television and the BBC, phone them up. If you're called to a demonstration, march, because the bigger the noise we make, the more people that we can get onto the street, the more lives of Palestinians we can potentially save. There is one final thing, however, that's also important for us to confront. You see, on Christmas Day, something utterly appalling happened. On Christmas Day, just before the Israelis launched their attack, where was the Israeli Foreign Secretary, Litni? Where was she? She was in Egypt, shaking in the hands of Hosni Mubarak, and they planned together what they were going to do. And today, as people have tried to flee the Gaza, they have tried to flee the Gaza into Egypt, what response have they been met with? The bloody response of Egyptian troops and Egyptian policemen firing on them and forcing them back on the Gaza. And we have to also raise there for another demand. Arab leaders who are in bed with the Americans, who are in bed with the Israelis, are equally responsible for the catastrophe that is enveloping Gaza. And we will hold them to account as we hold the Israelis to account, as we will hold the Americans, whose warships, whose airplanes, whose F-16s are responsible for the death. We will hold them all to account when the time comes. There has to be a solution which has at its forefront peace, and beyond that there has to be a solution which has justice for the Palestinians. And that means justice for those who were kicked out of their homes in 48, who were kicked out of their homes in 67, and there will be no peace in the Middle East, and there will be no peace in Palestine until we have a just solution for the refugees of Palestine of 48 and 67. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. I think, as Michael has said, it's probably just the tip of the iceberg. The likelihood is that there probably will be a full-scale ground assault into Gaza. So I think we need to be ready, brothers and sisters. If things are called, if we do call a demonstration or a vigil or whatever else, please be ready to come out. But thank you for coming today. Before we end, I'd like to call again on Malana Elias Desai to end with a short prayer. Before we do the prayer, we'll just have a 1 minute silence, please.